Muhammad is asking a lot of questions once again. This continues in verse 480. What are the elements of enlightenment? Whence are the constituents of enlightenment? Wherefore is a revolution and the disturbance of a kingdom? And how does the realistic view of existence take its rise? I tried to give Muhammad some benefit of the doubt that his questions were taking us to a new level of understanding. But it seems they might be getting carried away again. But let's go with it for the time being. What are the elements of enlightenment? Well, enlightenment has no elements. The early Buddhists had a penchant for reducing everything to its fundamental elements, possibly even enlightenment. But this is to misunderstand enlightenment as a thing, as a state even. Enlightenment isn't even a state. Enlightenment is a process, a dynamic process. It doesn't have any elements because it's not a thing. It's not part of any system. It's not part of any framework. It's not part of any understanding. In a sense, it is the fundamental element. So the next question doesn't make any sense really once we understand this. Whence are the constituents of enlightenment? Well, we've had the factors of enlightenment, and these were covered back in video 204, which was called the 5 factors of enlightenment practice. And this was a description not of enlightenment but of enlightenment practice, because this is actually all there is. There isn't enlightenment. There's only enlightenment practice. Enlightenment practice is when we move our awareness, our attention, from what it's aware of to awareness of itself. Just awareness, without being aware of anything. It seems contradictory to talk about awareness being aware of itself. What this means is, when awareness is aware of itself, it's not going anywhere. It's abiding in itself. And this is enlightenment practice, and this is all there is. Awareness habitually wants to go out to the objects of awareness. Enlightenment practice, well, we accept that. There are times that has to happen, but most of the time it doesn't need to happen, and so we can practice, and we can practice being in awareness. Wherefore is a revolution and the disturbance of a kingdom. I'm going to take this as a metaphor. A kingdom represents here stability. And when you grow up in a particular kingdom, it's as if that kingdom has always been. But at some point, maybe not in this generation, but quite possibly in this generation, it's going to fall apart. There's going to be a revolution, a turning round of the established order. And this is what happens when we become enlightenment practitioners. We're turning round the established order. And why should this happen? Why should this happen at some point? Because it's like we're getting fed up playing a certain game. At some point, we start questioning things. Even if you're a television addict, at some point you need to switch it off. You need to come back to something more real. The effort of maintaining the illusion becomes too great. And so we must start asking questions about the bigger picture. Who am I? What's this all about? What about my happiness? Can I be happy always looking out there? Can I find fulfillment always looking out there? Or can I simply come back to what is looking? Oh yes, you can. And when you can, you'll see, you'll realize what is ultimately fulfilling. And how does the realistic view of existence take its rise? And this is what happens. This is part of the dynamic. We have the revolution. We turn things around. We set things aright. But what happens is the attention is always being pulled out into what appears, into what is apparent. And whatever the attention is aware of, that becomes what is real for however long the attention focuses on it. So this is the realistic view of existence, which isn't realistic at all. But this is the power of consciousness. Whatever consciousness is conscious of, that becomes reality. When we're in a dream or an hallucination or a hypnotic state, or when we're caught up in our beliefs, and that's what we're conscious of. When we're conscious of our beliefs, that's how we understand things, that's how we see reality. When we're caught up in watching a drama, a theatre play or a movie, that becomes what's real for the amount of time that we're immersed in it. That's a good example though of the Enlightenment practitioner, because when we're watching a movie or a theatre drama, no matter how much we get caught up in it, part of us knows that it's only a drama, that it's only make-believe. And this is how we are with Enlightenment practice in relation to the world of conventional understanding. We engage with it, we get caught up in the drama, but part of us is always knowing that it's not real. That we shouldn't mistake it for reality, that at some point it's all going to fall away. It falls away, not only at the point of death, but every night when we fall asleep. And it changes all the time, depending on our circumstances, whether we're at home, at work, abroad on holiday, by ourselves, with our family, with our colleagues, with our friends. We like to think of reality as one thing that we're experiencing, but it's changing all the time. We might say, well, what about mathematics and physics? They give us a coherent, stable view of reality. Well, that's changing all the time too. You might say, well, the core of it isn't changing, it's just becoming more refined. But it's an abstraction. Even if you're a physicist or a mathematician who's at the cutting edge of the development of this understanding, you're still going to come home at the end of the day and spend time with your family, go on holidays, enjoy a novel, whatever. That is not the reality that you're 100% focused on. You'd be less than human if that was the case. You'd be less than human if you were. So this is the dynamic. There's enlightenment, and this comes about through a revolution in the status quo, of our understanding. But then there's this tension. Once we've had the insight into the truth of our status quo, then we lose it again. We get caught up in conventional reality. So then we have to come back again. We make the effort as enlightenment practitioners to come back to this awareness, the awareness that's hearing this, the awareness that encompasses everything.